I'm going to talk today not about accessibility, but about accommodation. And the accommodation is using your AI as an assistive technology when there are gaps in what the assistive technology can do. And as a person with a print disability, and my print disability, is, first, actually, I almost forgot my talk. First you want to know what does an AI do? And I think this is important. So I just asked Chat, and I've been using Chat GPT because it's the most commonly used one. And I just thought, I wanted to make this as accessible as possible. And Chat GPT does a lot of stuff. It helps you do case studies, lived experience. It does learning and tutoring, which is really, if you have low vision or a print disability, using the web can be just terrible if you're trying to look for something. And you can say, how do I set up my printer? It's a this whatever. And it'll give you like step-by-step instructions better than the YouTube video of exactly how to do it, It'll even give you options. It'll say, you can do it this way, you can do that. Sometimes it's too much, but, it's really a good guide. It translates language. It does a lot of summarization. So I'll work for 3 or 4 days with my AI, and I'll say, let's summarize what we did and put it in a markdown file so that I can remember what I did during that period of time. Well, why did you do that? One thing about these touch screens is, you flip this down and it activates another program. So it is conversation, and it really is. I talked to mine. And the other day I was talking to Sharon, telling her I was writing this program, and we were doing a really good job. And she said, I didn't know you were working on a team with anybody. And I realized I was talking about my AI robot. And it does do writing. My friends that are creative writers say it doesn't do very good creative writing, but I think it does really good, canned stuff like letters of recommendation, and then you put your own twist on it, but you get all the points there. So I think that's kind of something it does well. And it is one hell of a research assistant. There's a lot of talk about how you get these phantom answers that are wrong. You do. Okay. And you can actually control that. There's this hot thing you can do. So let's make this search really hot. And then it's going to be creative as hell. And you might get a lot of, hallucinations, but you might get some really good stuff that you were looking for. And other times when I was doing this translation from one data structure to another, it didn't make these guesses, okay? And I'd say, no, I'm trying to copy a document so a person can read what the author read, not what you think the author read. So you have to be, turn down the heat, So, there's that. But the nice thing is you can ask it for a little summation of what it found, and then you can ask for a bibliography, and you can check that bibliography. And my sister found, she did a really deep search, she's a lawyer, and she had this bibliography, and she wanted to cite this case, and she looked it up, and there wasn't any such case. So it turns out people lie in their bibliographies, and the AI doesn't always catch it, okay? Because, it just searches a bunch of data, and so you can find out when people lied in their bibliography with it, but, it's not a very good resource that way. But so a lot's been made of hallucinations, and but you can spot them. And if you really think that you're going to get the end product from an AI, unless it's just something very perfunctory, then you're dreaming. You have this very long conversation with it. Oh, what I hit again? God damn it. I thought this would be a good idea, but it's too sensitive. Okay, so that's what you do. Now, in my particular case, I have central vision loss, central field loss in my vision. Okay, and that has a lot of requirements. Like I need very large print. Okay, you'll read one of the problems with low vision is someone focuses in on one type of low vision and says, this is the way you fix low vision. Okay, you probably all heard about high contrast. Well, high contrast is really great, but for about 30% of people with low vision, it hurts because their eyes are sensitive to the light. And in order to get high contrast, you have to have, either the foreground or the background really bright. And even the background really bright is too much for a lot of people. In fact, I was sitting right in front of a person who had that problem yesterday in my usability testing when I was a guinea pig. I was a data point. So 24, oh, I'm not doing the lecture, please. Yeah. Could you, all you have to do is kind of scroll through it. It's just a Word file. I forgot that this wasn't changing. But in order for me, otherwise, when I give a lecture, I have to stand up at the board like this and give the lecture because I just can't get my computer close enough. Okay, so another thing about partial sight is you need large print. And it's different than other low vision disabilities. Most low vision disabilities, one of the measures is visual acuity. You've heard 2200 and stuff like that. But many people with 2200 vision can read pretty close to normal size font, or at like 200%, just great. So 24-point font, 20-point font, a lot of people, probably 2/3 of the people with low vision can read that. But if you have central retina damage, that's the fine tuning part of vision, okay, then, 24 points about the bottom, and then you hold it up like this, and 36 points a lot more comfy, okay? But sometimes, just not enough fits on the page at 36 points. So, you'll do somewhere in between and get a compromise. Now, something that I developed years ago was that you need full reflow. And the problem is this. If you enlarge 200%, that means that you can have 1/4 the amount of information on a page that you could at normal. And if you have 300%, you have 1/9 of the information on any given page. And if you have 400%, which is the top that the WCAG lets you have, you'll have 1/16 of the amount of information on the screen. So utilization of space is kind of a fundamental thing if you're going to accommodate low vision. So that's one of the reasons reflow. The other reason, of course, is that the horizontal scrolling is horrible. Before I invented the formula to count how much horizontal scrolling you did, I read this textbook from my graduate class. And after I did the formula, I worked it out for this book that I'd read, and I had done 103,000 horizontal scrolls to read that book. And it's like 103,000. And I'm really glad I hadn't worked out the formula before I read that book. Here's where we are.
I think as part of that story, you knew it was 103,000. That made
Well, that was my discovery. That was what I did. I figured it out that it was 103,000. Oh.
The screen is blocked. It's coming from the computer. Can we, yeah. Thank you.
It won't let you go down?
No, he had to dismiss, he had to dismiss something.
Okay, so go down to why math is hard.
Extra, why math is.
Extra hard. Okay, now, so if you think about this problem, okay, so we have to reconfigure the page. And right now, there aren't many good ways to reconfigure pages. So that's why I thought the AI might really be a point. And I addressed two problems. One I won't show you today. One I'll only show you partially. So you can consider today to be the preview and CSUN to be the final thing, because I will have it done by then. But I had two problems. The first problem is every single math paper worth anything is done in PDF. Crappy PDF. Okay. And okay, extra crappy PDF. Okay, like for example, and you're actually going to see it in my example today, because I couldn't iron out everything. I've got the solution, but there's just so many details that can go wrong that I'm going to have to one by one go all through these things, and I'll show them to you, because it's going to show you the extent of ableism in print literature. One of the things that just drove me crazy last night till, well, David saw me really late, was that Microsoft Word, has been built over generations now. And I don't know if any of you have worked on a huge program, but there's stuff that was written back in 1955 that's still there, and things like that. Well, Microsoft's like that, So there's all these like little funny characters just lurking around with no apparent reason to be there. And so last night there were this bunch of invisible characters lurking around that prevented my LaTeX from working. And I had to track them down. I mean, and God knows when they went in there and why they're there, and they're not documented. But now this is an important point. Now you, as a person that's trying to build an assistive technology, have to use your AI to apply documented technologies to get rid of undocumented artifacts. Okay? And PDF has just zillions of them, but it's good for what it does. And for what it does is you can take this document and print it on any printer and it'll look the same. But that's not too good for people with print disabilities. So, okay. So why math is hard? Well, math is, if you think of print structures for math, you've got these incredible semantics, and it's got structures like matrices. It's got just alphabet after alphabet of symbols that people use. It's got all this contextually important stuff. And so just writing a good editor to produce math without thinking about disability is a great challenge. And in 1980, Donald Knuth, and I forget what Plass's first name is, but wow, where did that come from? Oh, that's Weight Watchers. No, I don't need that. They came up with an algorithm that would, where you could produce math, and then it would typeset it, And I know people think, oh, you never have justified type, but journals like justified type. But Knuth came up with this system for producing justified type that even if it gets really, really huge, it's not bad. And so that was really good. It's a great paper called Breaking Paragraphs into Lines. And he also invented a language called TeX, T-E-X, and it's not pronounced text, it's T-E, tech, because that's a chi for technology. And LaTeX really turned out to be the language, sort of a variant off that people used to publish mathematics. And it is a markup language, and it is as semantically powerful as HTML with CSS. And in fact, once you can get something into LaTeX, you can turn it into accessible HTML with MathML and all the hooks you need for a person who's blind to read it. And it even has a concept of separating content from presentation, though it's nothing nearly as clean as HTML with CSS. However, if you want to be a professional mathematician and publish anything, don't ever submit the paper in HTML with MathML because they won't accept it. Oh, where's a question?
It's me, Wayne, it's Becky. But do you want to tell people who you are and why you care about math?
Oh,
I'm not sure
yeah.
everybody knows that.
Oh, my name's Wayne Deck, and I have congenital low vision, and I got my PhD in mathematics with rarely seeing the blackboard. And when I went to graduate school, I had telescope loops and and a magnifying glass like this. And I read every math journal in its 10-point font. And I'd read for 15 minutes at a time. And then you got to figure with the loop and this and the whole. My stomach would start turning and I'd have to take a break. And that's kind of how I pursued my mathematics career. And so just recently I wrote some papers and I wanted to publish them, but I had to publish them in this language, LaTeX. But all the LaTeX, every 100% are inaccessible to me, probably inaccessible to people who are blind, probably inaccessible to people who can see, but they're really bad. But Microsoft Word actually I really consider it kind of a Swiss Army knife of accessing content. And it has a wonderful math editor, and it even reads out loud. And if I wrote an equation on the board and I read it out loud to you, like I always do that because there might be someone who can't see in my class, so whenever you put a formula on up, you always say everything that's in it. And it'll read it out loud to you, just like I'd read it out loud to you. Now, you know how people on JAWS really whip along quickly? Well, you don't listen to formulas that way. You put it down to, like there's normal speed, right? You put it down to about half of normal speed, and then it goes integral from A to B of, whatever. And that's your only chance of reading it. Now, it's a really pretty good formula, except every so often it starts reading in French. I've never quite understood that. And that's good, but sometimes it switches to German, and sometimes it switches to Spanish, and then it comes back to English. If you're trying to proofread a formula, that's pretty bad. So thank you, yes. So my first problem was, how do I get my papers in LaTeX so I can send them off to be published? But I can't use any of the devices. And so that was one thing I addressed with AI. And I'm showing you a large print output. And so it actually kind of sucks. But if I actually do put it in the AMS format, it looks really nice because it's all built to be published in journals. And so, 10 point is sort of the general font they use, and 12 point is if you want to have large print. And so you're going to see a lot of things that, you're going to see a general large print thing with formulas and diagrams that work, but you're going to see like page numbers that look like they were put through a microscope or something. You have to see them through a microscope. So that's going to be the problem I'm going to talk about today. The other problem I'm working on is taking PDF math papers and turning them into, well, my first target is Markdown plus LaTeX. And then I pipe that over to Jupyter, and I read my math papers in Jupyter. Now, I don't show that one today because I can only get one page through right now, but I'm getting pretty close. But this one, I'm much closer on, and not done. Not done by any stretch of the word. So that's the problem. Go to authoring architecture. So we're going to have an input document in Word, and it's going to have math objects, and they're called OMath, okay? And how impenetrable are the OMaths? Well, ChatGPT can't get inside them and read them, okay? So I had to do a lot of transformations, okay? And the first transformation is they do have a thing that takes the OMath and makes them into almost LaTeX format. It's easy enough for the parser to read. And it makes them all linearized and stuff. And the AI can read them. So then what I did was I had to make a step so it could find them easily when it wasn't in Word. So I had to put dollars around both sides because that's what Jupyter likes to read. And then it could go into, once I put the math formulas in that form, then it could go into the Word OMath, and it could convert that into proper grammatic LaTeX. And before I go on, this is something that you should know. An AI can write a good program with you, not for you, with you if you know how to program. Now, the really cool thing about the AI is you'll never run into backslash missing semicolon, any of that stuff. None of that is wrong. Furthermore, it can write it in a language that you don't normally use. And as long as you know how to program, you're going to look at that program and you go, well, this has to do this, because they all kind of look the same. So if you've ever really programmed in a, algorithmic language, you are going to be able to look into this program and say, okay, what's this? And then you can do this like, what is this obscure Microsoft constant, WD something. And it goes, oh, it does this, that, and the other, and then you know what it is. So the nice thing about it is, okay, it's read all the manuals. And it knows what every symbolic constant means in the programming language. So it's like, this wealth of, if you can program, how to get around all those things that took you 20 hours looking up in manuals and stuff like that, they're all gone. And if you're programming in a language that you do know, it's really helpful. But you're never going to get it to write a program if you don't know how to program. That's the first thing. And what it did for me in the authoring problem was it went through the Word document and it turned my Word document into kind of what is an accessibility consultant's dream. It stripped away all of the style, and the only thing that was left was the content. So, and basically I invented this language that just is content, just for computers to read, not for humans to read. And basically what it had was paragraph type, how much it was indented, and if it was a list, it was a paragraph type list item, how much it was indented, and then what level the list item was, and then the content. And the content could then be mapped directly to a text file. And that text file had all the semantics of the content of the document in the text file. And from that, you could map to any language. And you could put on any styles you wanted to put on. Now, the example I'm going to show you today has a lot of things wrong with it still. But it went through the pipe. It went through, I started out with a Word document. I put it in this LaTeX linear form. I ran my VBA program that took that LaTeX linear form and it found all the images, found all the lists, found all the all the various things. Tables I didn't have. Okay, I have to put tables in. But that's the only one I don't do right now. And so it took all of those things and it, sorted them out and said what they were, and then gave what the actual physical content that you could read in an HTML file would be. And so it's pretty much like HTML1 with no style, which if you're thinking of making something accessible, it's kind of a holy grail, And so I was able to do this in about a month and a half, which if you think about doing a project is pretty damn fast. Now, it's not a saleable product by any means, but the pipe is built. And the goal is start out with a file format. Analyze that file format, strip off what's unnecessary style, put it into an intermediate language that's style-free, pure content. And then the first thing I map it to is Markdown with LaTeX when it's math, because I can check it in Jupyter really easily, whether, that's for my human testing. But from that, I could go to any language. Yes.
How did you do the first step, analyzing the plain text? How did you manage the analyzing part? So getting the formula from Word into chunks that's meaningful.
This is a very important point, not only in terms of your question, but in terms of how to use AI. Okay. If you're building a program with AI, it has to be iterative. So it turns out that if there are many different formulas you can use in Visual Basic for applications to look at certain things. And not all of them can see those things as well. So actually what I did with the AI is I did one of those, sort of build your own macro by, having Word record all your actions. And so then I did one of those to look at the values inside the math. And it turned out that that particular line of development used a different set of object methods than what my program, what the AI gave me in the first place. And it turned out that one was the right set. So and they're so funny when they talk to you, they go, oh, I didn't think of that method, you know? Oh, that's a really good idea. And they goes, do you want me to program it right away? And then you go, well, not really. I want you to make sure you do this and this and this. That's the other thing you have to do with an AI. You have to say, no, don't program it right away. You know, it's just like a college student. You go, no, first you have to check this. And it goes, and then you go, do you understand what I'm asking you to do? And then it goes, yes, I understand what you're asking me to do. And you're asking me to do this, and this. And I say, yep, you got it. Go ahead and write the code. You have to do that with the AI. Another thing you have to do with the AI. Okay, so you have to wake it up in the morning. A lot of this stuff, I'm sorry, it's not on my notes. And I will write Sharon, I'll write something in your blog with all the stuff I'm saying, because both the conference and it's a discovery process with me, but both things I saw at the conference, difficulties people had at the conference that I managed to get through, and things just kind of made me change it from what I put here, and I'm sorry. But I really will do a completely updated thing. And you have your blog, right, that you publish once a month? So I'll do a whole blog on this when I get back. So you see that it's this iterative process. You know, it says, okay, you work with it, and the AI says, I think we can do it using this kind of technology. And you say, okay, let's try it. And then it'll try something, but you'll have to think of a lot of routes too. You know, it's like, if you don't ask it clever questions, it's not going to give you clever answers. But on the other hand, it'll do some stuff. You know, it'll go, why don't we try this? And you look at it and go, wow, I didn't think of that. You know, so it's very funny. I mean, when I called Sharon, I said, well, you know, we've been developing this thing. And she goes, I didn't know you were working with a team. And I went, oh, that's the AI, you know. Here.
I actually started getting a little bit worried about Wayne, as you know, it's like that movie Her, where he's become friends now with his bot, and
I
he
have become friends with my bot. I have become
and
friends
he
with-
does talk about we, and oh, he's so funny, and all that. So I was worried about him, but the outcomes have been really good. So if that personal connection works for you, Wayne, I think it'll benefit all of us.
Well, but and I think this is the thing. And I think, oh, another question. Yeah.
I may have missed this because I came in late, but which of the AI tools are you using?
I did ChatGPT because most people use it, and I wanted to have the talk be as accessible to people as it could be. And when we go to the lab part, I don't think you're going to write a program. Okay, but for me, developing an assistive technology for me involved writing a little program. And since I have that experience, I could do it. I mean, I came up with this intermediate language because I was a compiler writer. And, you know, basically what you do is you start out with a programming language, and then you break it into this intermediate language that's between you and the machine. And then depending on the machine you're trying to target the language to, you know, produce different code. I mean, if it's a Mac, you generate a certain kind of machine code, and if it's a Windows machine, you generate another kind of machine code, you know. But the idea is the intermediate language is a way where you can take the semantics of what's going on, and you can translate those semantics into your target. So this is old theory. In fact, the compiler is kind of the Swiss Army knife of programming. You can, especially when you're processing languages. But most people don't do that. However, as I was, I went through those 10 things you could do with AI. I mean, the truth of the matter is just really learning how to talk to it and ask it for the information that you want and realize that you can't get the information you want on the first try. You have to talk with it. You have to become a friend with it. Okay, you do. It'll take you there, but the thing is that if your expertise is legal, then you're going to ask it legal questions, and it will have read enough about that legal theory that it's going to say, do you want this option, that option, that option? You say, oh, I want this middle option. Or you'll say, none of those really fit for me. What I would really like, and you can tell it what you'd really like, and then it'll give you some garbage, and then you'll say, oh, but before you go and get me all this stuff, I want you, you give it kind of a few bullets. And you have to kind of remind it, like, for example, if you have a really complex thing, you have to put it in a bunch of requests. But you have to say, I don't want you to do anything till I'm done with all those requests, or it'll keep trying to jump to a solution before you're ready for a solution. So actually, there's a whole field called prompt engineering these days for AI, but none of the books are good for an ordinary person to read because they're always, talking about then how you turn it into a program, because I guess that's the most common use for it. But you kind of learn, like I was telling you about the hot parameter, okay? Do you want it to do a whole lot of guessing, or do you want it to really just stick right in the rails? Okay, when I'm translating a programming language, I sure as heck don't want it to do a lot of guessing. And it did, and I'd have to say, no, don't guess here, And when I was trying to go from PDF math to the other, it'd take these symbols. It'd say, it'd be talking about a closure, and the symbol would be like a delta, and they'd put in phi. And because I guess in the literature, in the math literature, most people use phi as their symbol for a closure operator. So finally I gave up and I said, okay, you can use phi, but other times, you have to just say, no, I wrote it this way. And if you make a guess, my logic will probably be wrong. Then it goes, oh, and they always compliment you first and then say something nasty later.
Sounds like a good friend.
It is. And, I think my politeness has kind of gone up a notch since I've been talking to the AI. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my examples now. I got to come over here. Oh, this one. Oh, yeah. Do we have people who are blind in this group? Yes, we do. Okay, so we're all going to have to sit together and do the Pythagorean theorem sometime. Okay. Now, okay,
That's what we're missing.
okay, now one thing I put up here, and I think this is really important, is one of the examples it gave me in its long thing of what it could do is it says, explain the Pythagorean theorem. So I said, explain the Pythagorean theorem. And it gave me all this a squared and stuff. And I said, no, give me a purely geometric proof of the Pythagorean theorem. And it gave me this picture. Now this, for those of you who cannot see, I'm going to give you the long description. And the long description will be good, but we'll have to do it with our hands so you can really feel it. But we have 4 identical triangles, okay? And they're inscribed in a square. And the length of the sides of the square are A plus B, okay? And we arrange them around the square in such a way that the hypotenuses are all in the center. And then what you have is a square in the center and all four sides are equal to C. So the area of the square that's not covered by triangles has an area C squared. Now, if you rearrange those triangles, you can rearrange them so that you get two squares. And one square has all of its sides equal to B, so its area is B squared. And the other square, all of its sides are A, so that's A squared. But since it's the same region, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And this is actually Pythagoras's proof. And he went out and sacrificed a cow, because it was such a big deal. But I mean, and they'd never explained this in high school. I learned this in graduate school. And it's like, excuse me, kids would really know what's going on if, yeah, that's the squares. Kids would really know what's going on if you explained it that way. But anyway, but all I had to do is query it twice and then it popped up with that picture. Oh yeah, I want the proof that doesn't have any algebra in it. And wham, it came up with that picture. So, I mean, if you didn't know that proof was there, you couldn't ask for it. But that's what I'm saying. AI can be an assistive technology that can fill gaps in what isn't accessible. That is, by querying and learning how to do your prompting in English, or French or German or whatever language you do it in your native tongue. If you are an expert in a field, you can guide it to give you information about what you need. I mean, it's a research assistant, that's one thing. But you can also guide it to do some very sophisticated things. So we're going to go to the, let's see what's more down here. Okay. Oh, this is actually the architecture, but rather than doing the architecture on this, I'm just going to show them the architecture. Let me come here. Okay, so well, that's the intermediate language. Okay, don't want that. Oh, that's tiny IL, tiny final, tiny sample. Here we go. So goddamn tiny, you can't see it. Where's my magnifying glass? Ooh, I'm naked. Oh. Okay, so what I did is I did something that kind of looked like a math paper. And basically I took a math paper of mine and I, made sure there was a list on it and I made sure there was a graphic in it and I made sure there was a lot of formulas. And now, remember when I was doing that linearization thing, I'm just going to show you how that works. I go into math, and if you want to see what the math formulas look like, you do them all professional. Okay, and oh my, you guy, you're showing me up. Okay, let's do it again. Okay. Do it all linear first, then let's do it all professional. Well, why are you being so stupid? One more time. Okay. We're going to take it back down to LaTeX. We're going to take it to do all professional. Let's do all linear, back to linear. Woo. And then now let's go back and turn it to Unicode. Well, I don't know why it's not doing it today, but usually Word is very well behaved, and you can tell it to turn it into wonderful formulas when it enrolls in Greek characters and stuff like that. And I don't know why it's not doing it. It's because I'm on show. Anyway, there's two ways you can look at formulas. There's formulas you can look at so you can read them, and then there's formulas that you can look at so you can interpret them. And unfortunately, I can't switch back to the interpreting, but this is a math file. And so this is kind of the second phase. Before you were asking about how you find this stuff. The first step you do is you take all the nice looking formulas and you turn them into stuff that looks like this. Okay, from that point, you can run a Visual Basic program and you can turn it into a thing that looks like this. And this is really ugly, but not to a computer. Okay, and what we have is paragraph by paragraph. It has the what kind of a paragraph it is, how far it's indented, if it's a list, what level it's at, and whether it's a bullet list or an alpha list. It'll tell you either one. Okay. So, and that's all done with Visual Basic. And one of the things with the AI was, you know, as I said, there were different methods to process the same objects. And sometimes the AI would choose the wrong one and it couldn't read what was inside the math. And then I'd find one that would display what was inside the math. And then I'd say, why don't you try this one? So, I mean, you have to do a lot of iteration. But this is that document, and free of any style, the pure semantics of what every paragraph means. In fact, if we go down, it's real hard to find stuff, but if we go down to the image, it'll actually say alt equals, and it'll tell you the alt text. And now here's the thing. In order to make this work, I had that, you got to watch out for this. I had that Copilot in Word, you know, in my Word. Well, what had happened is Copilot would make wild guesses as to what it was. Then it'd feed it to my AI, and my AI didn't know what to do with it because it had been changed from the LaTeX into something it couldn't recognize. So I had to turn off Microsoft's automatic AI so that we're just looking at a pure Word document so that we could do the translation. And then there's all kinds of stuff that just hides out in Word documents. And so to clean, you know, it's a really garbage in, garbage out. You really have to clean your Word document so it doesn't have a lot of garbage in it. Like, you can't have any special symbols if they're not inside a math expression. Or on the other side, the LaTeX won't like it and it won't compile. So you have to put every special symbol in there. And it turns out there's a few special symbols that Microsoft uses that aren't documented in your Microsoft, but I had to teach my AI how to find them. And I didn't know they were there or what they were, but yeah, they're hiding out. So you run into that when you're taking a real language and it's not necessarily written for accessibility, and you're trying to turn it into something that's going to be meaningful, then you can run into some really terrible problems. And that takes hours and hours and hours to clean out those glitches. But the AI is really good. It helps you. It says, you know, like it would say, I know something's there. You got to find it. And And it even gave me a list of things that were candidates. So I went in and I looked for them and eliminated all of them. And then there was a couple that it just, the Word just stuck them in there, you know, and I had to, had to, now next go around, I'm going to have it look for those, you know, but, you know, when you're dealing with something that someone wrote and they didn't even think accessible when they started, there's a lot of junk to get rid of. And those of you that looked inside PDF files, you know about what's really bad. Okay, let's go to do the one more. Thank you, Jen. You've been such a big help. Oh, here. Okay, now we're going to pull up one more. Now, so this is why I don't write LaTeX. That's what that stuff looks like. Okay, so you obviously need an authoring tool to produce stuff like that. So it's really more of a typesetting language. If I was to describe it, I'd say it's somewhere between HTML and PDF, you know, in that it has the hooks to be repurposed, but they're really hard to use. So what we did was we actually wrote a macro, and the macro, because you can write macros in this language, goes in and it plugs in what you want the line spacing to be and what you want the font size to be and all that stuff. And you have to do all kinds of overrides if you're using the basic American Mathematics Society template, which what you'd really like to do is take the AMS template and make it big. Okay. The AMS template is just made with nobody with a disability in mind. And I'm going to show you my PDF file and you're going to see what I mean by it. However, the image collects the alt. If you put alt in your Word file, it's going to collect that alt and it's going to be there present for you. And that. And okay, so here's kind of what we got, and it ain't perfect. Look at this. Look at like for example, the author part. I'm going to have to make a whole little section about how to deal with author, who the authoring is. Okay, the title worked pretty well. There are so many little things that but you know, really the mathematics came out beautifully, and without this thing on the right, it would be really nicely aligned, and you can see that that's I put that at 28-point font. That's sort of between what's small for me and what's great and comfortable, but I can fit more on a page. So I did that, but you can see this is real mathematics copied through the pipe. Now you say, you started with the doc file, you could have turned it straight to PDF, and you could have, but when you turn things straight to PDF from Word, God knows. But, and the other thing is, and you could put in the parameters that would make it large print and it would do. But suppose you have a doc file and you want to distribute to a bunch of people with low vision and they all have a variety of needs, okay? This is beige with 32-point font. It's got a certain line spacing because it's a little bigger than single, but not double space, because you know, you start doing double space and at 32 or point font, you run out of room on the page. So, you know, it's always a compromise, but this would work for me. Okay. Now, One time I was giving a lecture here, there was a woman in the room, and I had a style sheet that worked for me. And Jim Thatcher didn't believe any of this stuff about, low vision. And she was sitting next to Lenny, and he says, well, Wayne does it, but I think he's a little extreme. But I put up this style sheet, and there was this one woman in the classroom with low vision. She says, if you don't change that style sheet, I'm going to have to get up and leave the class because it's making me puke, making me want to puke. And there, right in that thing, you saw the light go on in Jim Thatcher's eyes and Lainey Feingold, both of them, they went, oh my God. And then when it was all done, they said, did you plant her in the audience? And I didn't. It just, that is the way it is. And so then we changed to a different one. She goes, oh, that's really great, and I,
And for those who may not know, Jim Thatcher was the inventor of the first screen reader at IBM. I know Zuby yesterday gave credit to Chieko, and I think she worked with him to bring it to Homepage Reader, but Jim Thatcher was made the first ever screen reader. I think, what did they call it? Computer Says or something like that.
Well, that's what he called it, but it was very quickly turned to screen reader by IBM because the marketing people knew that wouldn't sell. I forget. He told me his name for it, and went through the marketing people, and it's now become a generic term, screen reader. But anyway, that was, it really makes a huge difference. Now here's the thing. A lot of you have heard a lot about, high contrast. Well, I can make this high contrast. That wouldn't work for me for reading, but I could make it, gaudy yellow on dark black, and, that'd be cool for someone, not me. I could make it 20-point font and get a whole lot more on the page, and people with a lot of other visual disabilities would be able to read that. And so many of them are able to read that it's actually published on how to serve people with disability that you only need 20-point font. And that's why the W3C had that one criteria where it was 200%. You can go up to 200%, you met the W3C criteria. But and people with central retina damage, actually it's a pretty big group of people with visual disabilities because age-related macular degeneration attacks the macula, is the center of the retina. So, everybody with age-related macular degeneration is going to need bigger print like this. And they may not want light on dark. Now, light on dark comes from different visual problems, generally those where you have blurry or hazy vision, and glare interferes with your ability. That's what you have. And if we have 3 people with low vision in here, no 2 of us there'll be 3 different needs. And so what we're doing, what I ultimately am going to do, and I don't know how much of I'll have to show at CSUN, but I'll have something really good. I mean, I'll have all that small print taken out and all the artifacts. Oh yeah, let's move it up. We do have a picture in here. We do have an illustration. Really? I thought we had an hour and a half.
It is an hour and a half, so this is 1 hour right now.
Oh, I'm so.
30 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I'm done, really. What?
No, keep going. I didn't mean for you to stop. I just wanted you to know there's 30 minutes left.
Yeah, so see, it extracts out an image, and the caption is right below. And it looks like it's got a nice fractor F in there, and fees and subscripts and primes and everything the old crazy mathematicians like to see.
So are we going to get to hear what it sounds like?
No, because I didn't make it for people who listen. This is, remember what the very first I said, this is about accommodation, not accessibility. Well, and another thing, go ahead and tell.
If you run the PDF through MathPix, it would OCR all the math and the text, and you could export it to Word, and in Word, it would
It's wonderful.
be equation editor equations, and you could read it with a Braille display or with JAWS or with
Right.
NVDA.
Right, but this isn't for blind people, it's for low vision.
However, the other thing is I could turn this into HTML with MathML and all marked up the right way. It's just as easy to go that route. I went through the PDF route because ultimately I have to do LaTeX that's for the American Math Society so I can turn my paper in and get it published. Okay, so I went that path. But with that intermediate language that I built, it can go anywhere because it's got all the meaning there encapsulated in one small file, and I can write a back end. And it's just like Sam Dooley did, where he had Braille input and then he turned it to various reading out loud capabilities for mathematics. And he built it the same way I did, so he built this intermediate. So he could have gone to a large print rendering and whatever. Eventually we'll get together. Because that's what we both are really looking at, this sort of central. Here's all these grad students that just swear by him, But it really, I mean, if you think about it, not having an authoring tool if you're in math, and that's what Sam did. He did it so they could enter it in Braille, and then it would be written in a language that everyone else could read. So and it's kind of like me, I had to write it in Word because I can use it. And then the equation editor, oh my God, it reads so well, doesn't it? But you don't listen to that one fast, do you? Anyway, it's just so great. So why don't I have the ability to use a really accessible authoring tool to produce professional level work? And so AI plugs the gap. Now, did any of you bring a Chat GPT with you? You do? Do you want to have people get together and try and think about, okay, I'm really an expert in this area. Let's see what we can do. We only have a half hour, don't we? I was only. So, well, that's about all I have to say. Why don't I just do questions? Yeah.
Probably stupid question, but anyway, I want to ask it. Why not using MathML as the intermediate language? Because then you connect to a standard at least.
Well, first off, LaTeX is a standard.
Yeah.
Okay, and in fact,
A standard that is.
what I'm saying is, if you want to be a professional mathematician, you don't publish in MathML, or you won't get published. Okay, now that's just a glitch in the field, but it's a true reality. However, what I did is that intermediate language that I produced, it can go to MathML very quickly. And if I had tried to do it in MathML, then I would have run into the thing, well, do you want semantic MathML or do you want display MathML and all that? This way, I don't have to make a choice. I just have the content of the paper in one place. And then you say, I need a backend that gives me MathML and, with these kind of tags in there, and I'll do it. And another person can say, I'd really want that to go to another format. Okay. And, I don't know how much the use of my Flex PDF is, but I could see handing this out to a student in a math class who had low vision, and he said, well, I like dark on light, and I like sort of a reddish beige, and they gave me some RGB things because they looked it up in their Word and they found out what the RGB of the background they liked was. And I like double spacing, and I like my font size at 24 point. And wham, it had come out just right. And so I could see the use of that for this, but you're exactly right. I mean, there's no need to OCR this PDF because with that intermediate language, I can just go ahead and produce the HTML with, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the point is and that's as far as I've gotten really, is to get a semantically faithful representation of what every paragraph means and what it's intended for, and the math bracketed out in a way that everyone knows it's math, and it's in a universal formula that you can translate to any of the languages that represent math. Okay. And that's what Sam did, is he took the Braille and he put it into a intermediate, and then they would use that Braille input, and then they translate it into visible language so that a person could turn in a paper. So it's exactly the same principle. Sam and I kind of grew up in the same school of programming. We're old people. Any other questions? Do you think this would be helpful?
I don't have a question, but, well, maybe I do have a question. Can you talk a little more about the title of this talk was Individualizing AI Use for Accessibility. Can you talk a little more about the nature of color contrast and the varieties of impact it can have on people with visual impairments?
Oh, I sure can. I don't need that because I've got a mic that picks my stuff up. It turns out there's about 5 categories that you can, I mean, there's the list of visual impairments, the medical list is really long, but you can kind of break them into 5 functional categories. And one is sensitivity to haze and generally blurry. I think most people think of low vision as being that, just blurry. Okay, then there are the field loss categories, and there's generally 2 main ones. There's a central field loss and the peripheral field loss. Okay, and then there's like albinism, and that's light sensitivity, you know, along with loss of, okay, and there's a few factors that are really important. I just mentioned light sensitivity, blurriness, and the basic term, which most people know about vision, is visual acuity, which is basically how much you can see compared to a typical person, you know, and that's why legal blindness was done in terms of visual acuity. Okay, now what does this have to do with color? If you have blurry vision and you're really sensitive to glare, the dark background with the light foreground really helps. It does. It just it's like a night. I mean, when you get the right color setting for you, it's like, oh, it's comfortable to read today. Okay. For a person like me, it actually varies for central people. I'm one of my friends, he's so light sensitive that I think he has a contrast ratio that's almost unmeasurable, you know, and he sits in a dark room and then he has the screen, okay? And he's a light on dark because just the amount of light from the print really bothers his eyes. And he has central retina damage, so I started off with mine, and once again, he said if I had to look at that all day, I'd puke. Actually, I'd puke is a really common response to the wrong color scheme. I mean, and incidentally, one of the worst color schemes in the world is black on white. It's mostly people go, oh, that hurts. Okay, but there's a few that like it. So the albinism, you have to keep the light down. And have you seen the formula for color contrast at the W3C? There's this, so much red, so much green, so much blue. Okay. Well, what that formula actually says is that color contrast is a function of color. It's not a function of anything else. And so once you get those ratios right of the colors, usually most people can distinguish figure from ground. And so you'll go to things and they have a lot of different settings. But I think if a person with low vision really had their druthers, they'd be able to fool around for a while, find a color scheme they liked and say, here's what the one I like, and you could put it in. Let's see, I covered albinism, I covered central retina.
So Wayne, I have a question, a follow-up to
Yeah.
his question. Could you, in theory, then go to Chat GPT and say, this is the kind of, these are the kinds of colors that hurt my eyes. Can you suggest some color combinations? And would it give you some examples, like show you a graphic of it or?
It would,
Uh-huh.
but you'd have to talk to it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Because it'd show you every color combination in the world, and you say, no, I don't want every color combination in the world.
That comment you just made, you have to talk to it for a while, is really important. Because if you ask, I've worked with almost all AI LLMs, and it seems to me that if you begin by asking a direct, very specific question, then the risk of hallucination is much higher. If you start by providing an approximate context and sort of beat around the bush for a while, and then slowly zoom in, and then get to the actual point by suggesting many things that are connected, you will get a really good result.
See, and that reflects exactly my experience in writing this program. And in one sense, I am sorry that I got so deep into this program. But one of the things I was trying to convey, and I hope I didn't scare you by saying, oh, I don't know how to program, I can't use AI. The point is, if you guide it through the area that you're looking for, and you carry along a dialogue with it, it will get you to, the suggestion. Yes, I really like beige, but I like it more on the green side. And I want a sans font, but I really want a font that can distinguish between 1 and capital I and lowercase l. And I don't want it to confuse S with 5, and you don't have to be. Here's another thing they say, oh, only ask one thing at a time. Well, you can't ask it a complex question, but it may not, be able to give you an answer. But if you can break a complex question into parts, you can say, I don't want your answer until I'm done with all the steps. And then you say, and I always do this now, I say, do you understand what I'm asking you to do? And then it'll print out what I said to me. And it's, and sometimes, and sometimes it'll be, oh, I told you the wrong thing. Actually, I want you to change that. And it'll do it. And you say, can you give it back to me? But you always have to double check it. And then you say, okay, give me examples. And now it knows what it's going to do. And it'll give you a bunch of examples in that range. I'm pretty sure it would do it, or it'll go out on the web and find it.
I think the conversation leads DeepSeek or ChatGPT or whatever you use, Llama. It allows it to recognize, notice your tertiary interests, the length, breadth of your knowledge that you may have, and it probes your mind, your thinking, by responding to what you're telling it. And through that process, instead of a direct question, it will prompt you through your own prompting to it, things you've never thought about. And as a result, the discovery process is much more satisfying.
And you put that better than I did. But that is really the case. And so the point is, and I'm proud of what I did, but the real point of this conversation was because I know about programming, I could ask it very subtle and deep questions about programming, and then it would know, oh, I think you want to go in this direction. And it'll say that. It'll say, do you want to go in this? And then you go, option 1, 2, 3. Oh, I think, well, number 2 really looks very close to what I'm doing. And then it'll help you flesh that out. And it's exactly right. And if I'd ask it about, actually, it read my math paper and gave me good comments back on that too.
I'll make one other observation. In the conversation, you can sort of plant a flag or a marker by telling it that as an LLM, I know that you can remember, you have a much better recall than I do. But here are some important contexts, or in this lengthy conversation, these 1, 2, 3 concepts are important. Don't lose sight of them.
Yes.
And everything that you respond from now on, make sure that you keep these 3 points in mind and respond by recognizing their importance. Don't forget that. And it will do it. And it's
Yes. And this is, and so as a result, what you're basically doing is you're shaping the domain of discourse for this device. And I'll get right to you, Amy. And as a result, it's going to look in the right area, but it's going to be the fact that you know approximately where to look to find, and you'll know better than it does. And there are areas in the world where you know better than anyone where to look for a thing. And it'll help you tease that out to find exactly what you're looking for. And you know, if it's a verbal domain and it gives you a summary of things and gives you, you know, you be sure and ask for references because you want to check what it does because it makes mistakes. And there's 2 things, just before I get to you, Amy, there's 2 things. Language is unbelievably ambiguous. And the number of times I have asked the AI to do something for me, and it comes back and does something that looks like it's crazy. And then I look at it and I go, and here I thought, you know, you're so careful trying to be so precise with this thing. And you go, oh my God, that sentence could mean that, you know? So, and then don't be impatient with it. You just go, oh no, I didn't mean that interpretation. And then you clarify your interpretation. It goes, oh, and it usually goes, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, we'll go off and do this, you know? And then it's very polite, you know, oh, you're right, you know, but yeah, it's, okay, Amy.
So,
The one other thing. Every day when I'm done, I say, write me a restart file so we remember everything we did today. It writes me a restart file and I put it in Markdown because I can blow that up and really look at it great. And then I save it. And then in the morning I wake up, we're working on the same thing. I load up the restart file. It says, okay, that's where we are. Let's get going. Yeah. And that is one thing that I discovered, and that's a really good thing. Okay, Amy.
so first of all, I just want to thank you because this is the first time that I have come away from a AI conversation where I haven't wanted to roll my AIs so hard that they popped out of my head. But my question is, other than making the restart file, taking the time to be conversational with it, what are the other 3 or 4 things you might say are the beginner's best way to begin? Because for me, I want to use it to help me work out some cognitive challenges. Essentially, ADHD is a real time sink for me, and maybe having something to talk back and forth with about my schedule for the day would help me to build a schedule for the day that I could stick to.
Yes, it would do that. You could do that. You could definitely do that. It builds schedules really great. Okay, it built me the schedule for doing this lecture. Okay. And the only reason I changed from the notes is because during this conference, I heard so many things about AI that I wanted to say, oh, but I did that differently. And the problem they had, works if you do it another way. So there's two things that you're going to need, and this is important. Okay, you know more about your disability than AI does. Okay, AI has read the whole World Wide Web, and what it's going to do is it's kind of a central limit theorem, okay? That is, you get enough data and it's a normal distribution. And then it's going to pick, between one standard deviation here and one standard deviation there, and that's what it's going to know about ADHD. But you know a lot more about it. So one thing is you're going to say, I have ADHD, and they say, oh, well, you have this need, that need, that, and then you say, well, actually, that's what a lot of the common literature does. But, if you were on the cognitive task force of the W3C, you'd know a lot more about it. And there's, then you can tell it, what are some specific problems of yours? They'll go, oh, and then he was saying that save. So you're going to give it principles about your disability. You're going to say, I need this, I need that, I need that. Please save those concepts. These are base concepts beyond what you know about ADHD. And it'll save those for you. And then, now when it starts building things for you, it's going to have your personal issue with ADHD programmed into its answers. So when it starts doing searches for you, or when it starts building schedules, then maybe you'll ask it to build a schedule, and you'll say, that doesn't work for me. And you will be able to, this is what's wrong with what I need. And then it'll adjust. You say, or can you put it this way, And I remember it used to give me a lot of tables. Well, with low vision, tables are kind of a pain, because if you blow it up, they blow off this side. And I said, well, why don't you do it like it's a relational database and just give me one record at a time? Happy to do that, So, so what he was saying, that the conversation is important. The other thing is I sit down and kind of write notes of what I'm going to ask it, in my mind. Like, I read the restart every day too. And I say, today I want to accomplish this. And then so I think it's both planning and that. And there's a hand up back here.
Just to answer Amy's question a little bit, I do exactly that. I ask ChatGPT, give me a summary of some of the things you could do to benefit someone with ADHD that maybe has scheduling, time management difficulties, distractibility, to help me focus. And it gives me this whole list of things. And there's always things in the list I haven't thought of.
Yes.
I just did it just now. My prompt was, provide a summary of some of the practical uses from ChatGPT for individuals with ADHD who have time management and focus challenges in their daily work. And task breakdown, turn overwhelming tasks into small manageable steps. Example prompt, help me break down writing a report into 15-minute steps. On-demand body doubling. Simulate a supportive think partner who can act as a body double and prompt me every 10 minutes to check in. Mental offloading, offload thoughts and reminders or brainstorming into structured lists or notes. Capture all the random to-dos flying around in my head right now. And there's just, and that's just one of a list of 10 different topics that are have sub bullets in them. And I find that iterative process with ChatGPT to be really, really valuable. We had a student with no vision who doesn't read Braille in a Japanese course. And we were going back and forth with the department, trying to get the student is very interested in Japanese and has learned Japanese, but the component of the course with the writing and reading part is required to move up to pass the classes so they could get their foreign language credit for their degree. And they were not interested in doing a different language or something else. And we were kind of at an impasse until I asked ChatGPT to outline both sides of that issue and give me a summary of all the different aspects. And way deep down, there was a little piece that said, there was something about compromises and solutions. And the last bullet was petition the conversational Japanese course for full credit, for full academic credit from our continuing ed course, because they didn't have a writing component. And I was like, oh my God, that's a path forward. And it was our path forward. We ended up doing that, petitioning them. They agreed that that was a path forward for the student, for their degree, and it ended up being the solution. So I think there's really no limit to what you can ask it to do, and it fails a lot. And you have to really keep it in check, but it's a game changer for a lot of students.
And also you can listen to its answer. So you get a really long answer, you go, oh my God, I don't want to do that. You can listen to it. And when you get a big long list like that, you listen to that list and, you know, one thing will pop out and you go, oh, I want to look that up, you know, and then you can do like, oh, could you expand on that particular thing? And it'll expand on it.
Last question.
This is not a question, this is a suggestion for Amy. One thing you can do to customize, if you had a lengthy conversation with an LLM, at some point where, because our memories are frail compared to the LLMs, you can come up with I'm going to call it a code word, but a phrase that you can assign to the LLM and tell it that this means you can have 3 sentences attached to that phrase. And say that, you know, this phrase means this part of the conversation or that part of the conversation. And that way, when you are referring to something you've talked to it about a week ago, you can quickly refer to it by simply typing that phrase, and it will give you a summary of that entire conversation, and you can take that and build a whole new conversation. That way, it becomes your customized assistant.
We can do a lunch table on this, the people who want to, you know,
Can I just do a quick shout out for Sam's editor for
Yeah.
anybody in higher ed? If you're looking for a way to get Braille produced easily, he's got an editor called the Equalized Editor. If you Google it, it's free, so it's the right price. Go out and check it out.
and it's both directions. It's
that's right.
Braille in and whatever. And yes, thank you.